From 1995 to 1998, that was, in my opinion, the string of draft classes that defined the era of the modern NBA. We saw legendary players like Kevin Garnett from 95, Tim Duncan and Tracy McGrady from 97, Kobe, AI, Ray Allen, Steve Nash, Ben Wallace, and a ton of others from 96. However, the 1998 draft was a particularly interesting one. It was a draft that included all-time greats like Dirk Nowitzki, Paul Pierce, and Vince Carter. However, it's less talked about because they were mostly later lottery picks, while the top of the class was kinda pitiful. There wasn't much depth to this class either. As you go down the board, the majority of the players flamed out within a few years, if they even played more than a single season. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today let's talk about the 1998 draft class. A bunch of players, many of whom had a solid start to their careers and at one point looked to be stars, but it didn't pan out for most of them. What went wrong? But before we start, this video is sponsored by Kamikoto. What is it? It's a knife brand that makes great Japanese steel kitchen knives. Each one meticulously handcrafted using techniques that date back to the Edo period of Japan, using only high-quality Japanese steel. Every knife goes through a 20-step process that takes several years to craft from start to finish, and they're all individually inspected with a lifetime guarantee. So I received the Kampeki knife set, which came with a beautiful wooden box. The knives look professionally crafted and they feel solid. I've held many other knives before and there's always something off about them, like the grip is awkward or it might feel off-balanced. But that's not the case with these. These Japanese steel knives feel amazing to hold and very ergonomic. Kamikoto is having a holiday sale and $50 off on top of that holiday sale if you use my discount code ANDY. You can visit my link kamikoto.com/Andy or click the link in the description below if you're interested in purchasing Japanese steel knives. So to start things off, the best players with the best careers in this class are quite obvious, which I literally just mentioned earlier, but here they are again: Nowitzki, Pierce, and Carter. Those three are honestly the only players from this class who had a significant impact on the history books. But they were only the 5th, 9th, and 10th pick. So what happened to everyone else at the top? Well, the first pick of the draft was Michael Olowokandi. Initially drafted by the Clippers as a guy with unlimited upside and supposed to lift the Clippers out of mediocrity, it turns out he'd become one of the biggest busts in NBA history, with a career average of 8 points a game and only a single appearance in the playoffs. Olowokandi was a massive disappointment. You know there's something wrong when even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar criticizes your attitude. According to him, this is what he had to say about Olowokandi. When I coached him for the Clippers, I had to deal with Michael Olowokandi, a player who perfectly fit the description, talented but uncoachable. At practice, I would attempt to point out Mr. Olowokandi's faults to him, ones he constantly repeated and resulted in lost possessions for the team or personal fouls that sent him to the bench. His reaction to my attempts to correct his bad habits was to take my input as a personal insult, an embarrassment. He told me point blank that he would not be criticized in front of the team. He stuck to his word and, as a result, had very few successful moments on the court, playing the way he wanted to play. A bit of a long quote, but it says so much about why his career failed. It wasn't even the lack of talent, it was everything else. The second pick was Mike Bibby. Definitely an underrated player back in his day. We all remember his time on the Sacramento Kings. He was either the second or third best player on those contenders, behind C. Webb and Stojakovic. Despite numerous iconic playoff moments and quite the unique playstyle, Bibby's career fell off rapidly as the Kings broke apart. In his best season, he put up 21 a game, but by his late 20s, he got traded and fell into obscurity. The third pick, Raef LaFrentz. Oh boy. Despite his absurd run at Kansas, two-time Big 12 Player of the Year, consensus first-team All-American, he's one of the greatest players in college basketball history. Sadly, it didn't translate over to the pros. During his NBA career, he was kinda known as a meme. LaFrentz was a stretch big during a time when nobody even knew what that was. He was labeled as soft for preferring to play outside the paint, and when he did try to rough it up, he got bullied down low. In his 10-year career, he played for 4 different teams, mainly as a role player. It was clear early on that he was not going to live up to his college hype. Antawn Jamison, the 4th pick. On draft day, him and Vince Carter actually got traded for each other and swapped their hats. Now, if you compare Jamison's time in Golden State versus Carter's time in Toronto, they both have a big impact on their franchises. But Carter was leaps and bounds ahead of him, not just as a player, but as an icon. In the early 2000s, he was one of the most recognizable names in the entire world, and single-handedly caused the popularity of basketball in Canada to skyrocket. Hell, if it wasn't for Carter, the Raptors might not even be in Toronto anymore. If they didn't have his star power to sell out tickets, they would have had to relocate, just like the Vancouver Grizzlies. Jamison had a fantastic career in his own right, a 2-time All-Star, a 6th Man of the Year, and part of a select group of players to score over 20,000 career points. He's definitely the 4th best player of this class and very underappreciated because he played on losing teams for most of his career. In 16 seasons, he only played in 46 playoff games. It's kinda crazy, he was so good for so long, yet always flew under the radar because the way he scored was kinda boring to watch. He had the skill and the talent, but not the pizzazz. The 5th pick, Vince Carter, y'all know about him. The 6th pick, Robert Tractor Trailer. This was the result of yet another trade. The Mavericks actually took him, but traded him for the rights to Dirk Nowitzki, along with Pat Garrity, the 19th pick of this class. This was by far the most important trade in Mavericks history. While Dirk blossomed into a superstar, Trailer never averaged more than 6 points in any season of his career. Sadly, his weight issues would be his ultimate downfall, and I don't mean just on the court either. In 2011, he died of a heart attack at the age of 34. It was a horrible ending to a player who had such a promising future after college. Anyway, the 7th pick, Jason Williams. Definitely the most interesting player of this class. At first, his coaches hated him, his teammates thought his playstyle was ridiculous. But he brought a ton of excitement in his first few years in Sacramento. At times, he even drew comparisons to the late Pistol Pete Maravich. But it was clear from the start, Williams would never be as good as him. His scoring was way too inconsistent, and his shot couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Funny enough, 3 seasons into their careers, Jason Williams would get traded for Mike Bibby. The Kings brass believed he was a loose cannon and too immature to be the point guard on a championship team. To be fair, they were right. Bibby was the more stable guy and he fit in much better. As for Williams, he eventually won a championship with the Miami Heat, so it worked out. And the 8th pick, surprisingly, one of my favorite players from this class, Larry Hughes. If you watched him back in the day on the Wizards, he was pretty damn good. He even led the league in steals in 2005. In fact, that season, him, Antawn Jamison, and Gilbert Arenas combined to average 67.1 points a game. They were the highest scoring trio in the entire NBA. Incredible. Hughes himself had a career year. Those are all-star caliber numbers. The Wizards even reached the second round of the playoffs before losing to the Miami Heat. Larry Hughes had such a high potential, so high in fact, the Cavs gave him a 5-year $70 million deal to pair him with a young LeBron. But Hughes basically took the money and ran. After joining the Cavs, his career fell off quickly, mostly due to injuries. Signing him was a big risk, as Hughes was always very injury-prone, and it got even worse as he aged. 9 and 10 are Dirk and Pierce. 11 is Bonzi Wells. People remember this guy for 2 main reasons. 1, he was on the Portland Trail Blazers, and 2, when he was on the Kings, he randomly went off against the Spurs in the playoffs, which prompted him to reject a 5-year $38 million extension to test the market. He thought he was better than he actually was due to a single playoff series, but no other teams bought it. Instead, he gave up $38 million to sign for $2 million with the Rockets. And, well, that's it for his career. The 12th pick, Michael Doliak. I mean, yeah, he played in the league, stuck around for a while as a backup center that got posterized a lot. That's pretty much it. And oh, he's a physics teacher. The 13th pick, Keon Clark. Similar boat as Michael Doliak, but Clark played even fewer games and stuck around for just 6 seasons. The 14th pick and the last pick of the lottery, Michael Dickerson. He had a short stint in Vancouver where he performed well, but because of severe hamstring and groin problems, he had to retire after 5 seasons. Now, that's it for the lottery, and as you can tell, a lot of guys were irrelevant. But it gets even worse, cause for the rest of the draft, you barely had any notable names, besides a handful of role players. Well, except for Rashard Lewis. He was legitimately good for a long time in Seattle. A sniper alongside Ray Allen, and those Sonics teams were incredibly fun to watch. Lewis was the 32nd pick of the draft, and out of all the remaining players outside the lottery, he was by far the best. Everyone else though? There's Matt Harpring, some solid years in Utah, kind of the bridge between the Stockton Malone era and the Darren Williams era. Al Harrington and Coutinho Mobley were both very good, borderline 20-point-per-game scorers. But they fall under the category of too good to be role players but not good enough to be stars. It's easy to forget about these guys, but they stuck around for a long time. Then you had some actual role players who played for a long time, like Rafer Alston, Nazi Muhammad, and who can forget
Rasho Nesterovic.
He's a backup.
Then you had others like Ricky Davis, who became more of a meme in recent years due to his comments about LeBron, and videos like this, where he tried getting a triple-double by shooting at his own basket and getting the rebound. But he was still a fairly good player when he wasn't being a clown. There's Ruben Patterson, the original Kobe stopper, or the self-proclaimed Kobe stopper. And who can forget these two memorable undrafted guys, Brad Miller and Earl Boykins. Miller was actually an all-star for a few years, a very versatile center, great passer, great court vision, with a solid elbow jumper. People nowadays like to make fun of him too, but he was unique for his time. And that's all, folks. Overall, this draft produced 6 different All-Stars, 3 Hall of Famers, or eventual Hall of Famers. But most of the lottery picks were bad. The top of the draft was abysmal, but the rest of the class did not produce much. Thankfully, there were a few draft day trades that changed history forever. I think that's what this class will be known for. Let me know your thoughts on this class. Where would you rank it among all drafts of the 1990s? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.